Thanks. This is my wife, Selena Eggington.
Hi, Selena.
We're from the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation, Robert.
Right.
We've got Rexy Bellotti.
Hi, Rexy. How you going? Good to meet you, Colin.
Graham Merritt.
Hi, Graham. How you doing?
Ben Merritt. Dennis Eggington.
Dennis here. How you going? Hello, Brian. Yeah, good to see you. Dennis as well. Yeah, no, lots of years. Popular name. Here. There you go. Come on. Yeah. Okay. How are you? Hi, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to sit down? Or?
Oh, yes,
okay,
yeah.
How about we just sit up in front of you?
I understand we've got about 10
about
minutes.
10 minutes? Yeah, just
Thanks.
This is Zach from my office here.
Thanks, Zach. Okay.
Okay, so look,
well, yeah.
Explain your day and, and what, and obviously
Yep. Yeah, we've had a lot of media coverage in the last number of weeks over a crisis that we're facing in our community, which is the suicide epidemic, in particular Aboriginal youth suicide. In 2009, both myself and my wife lost our son, young Robert, to suicide. Today you have here people who've lost their children, and at the meeting today there would have been well over 350 people turn up, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people who stood in solidarity and expressed the fact that we need to deter what's going on out there in our communities. We had a panel that was established through Dumbartung, and that panel was representative of the Mental Health Commissioner, Eddie Barton, the Chairperson for the State Council for the Prevention of Suicide, Peter Fitzpatrick, Laurie Panay, Assistant Police Commissioner, and Pat Dudgeon and Michael Mitchell. And that panel was asked some very hard questions by our community, and one of the issues that was raised was the issue dealing with funding our resources to our community through the Closing the Gap funding, and also the state funding for mental health and for health, so that we as Aboriginal people can have the right to self-determine, the best ways to deal with these issues that we're challenged with. This is bringing about an enormous amount of grief and suffering in our communities. As you would be aware, Australia is the second most affluent country in the world, second only to Norway. Its riches are obviously founded on the natural minerals and resources of the state upon Aboriginal lands. We as Aboriginal people are 126th on the world economies in terms of our impoverishment. So somewhere in that disparity lies these horrors of suicide statistics, and the fact that Noongar men from the southwest of Western Australia are the most highly incarcerated men on the planet, per head, per population, even more so recently found through the John Pilger's review office than black Africans are in Africa. So we expressed all those issues today as major concerns, and we want to at this stage thank you for meeting with us. I want to read the letter that was presented at the crisis meeting, and of course it was addressed to yourself, Premier, so I'll read that, and then we might ask you if you can respond to our letter and to this crisis meeting we had today. It was a very dignified meeting. It allowed Aboriginal people to vent the emotions that we face as a people, both in a sense of righteous anger as well as issues dealing with a great amount of pain and suffering through the loss of our children.
Just before we begin,
Yep.
people at the meeting were predominantly South Perth, Southwest Noongar people, is that?
Yeah.
Right through the region,
Yeah, right through the whole region, yeah. And of course we were aware again of that funding issue and needing to get grassroots advocacy projects funded. So this is to yourself, the Honourable Colin Barnett, to the Premier. Dear Premier, as is now stated and stressed by the United Nations State of Indigenous Peoples report globally, Australian Aboriginal suicide is the highest in the world. In a number of towns and Aboriginal communities in Western Australia, the suicide rates amongst the Aboriginal population is 100 times the national average. There is, as you would be aware, a significant increase of youth suicide deaths in early age ranges that are and have been reviewed by the State Ombudsman. There has been many reviews and action plans implemented by the West Australian Government over the past years, including the Sue Gordon inquiry and the focus of an unfortunate death of a young 15-year-old girl on the outskirts of Perth. There has been a massive increase in the expansion of the Mental Health Commission and the placement of a Mental Health Commissioner. However, the suicide epidemic amongst Aboriginal people surges with no deterrent as each year passes. Following the crisis meeting held by the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation on the 21st of May 2013 regarding the suicide epidemic across our communities, the following requests are forwarded to your office, as well as both the Mental Health Commission, the State Council for Suicide Prevention, the West Australian Health Department and the Department of Aboriginal Affairs. The Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation urgently requests for a triennial funding agreement to continue the suicide awareness programs and initiatives that we have constructed and implemented during the past 3 years. This awareness program needs to be coordinated on a statewide basis. To pursue the initiative to set up and structure an Aboriginal task force to work directly with the support and the confidence of the State Coroner's Office and Health Department to monitor and maintain an awareness on the epidemic of suicide deaths in our community. We request that the State Government to support the Noongar community to set up a safe place where our people who are suffering life-threatening despair can access direct contact with members of our community who have survived these challenges as a first step to the referral to more professional services for mental health problems. This initiative can be incorporated within the existing structures of the Aboriginal organisations currently working in this area. It is hoped that your government will support these initiatives as a first step from the crisis meeting and encourage further meetings with the departments who have a responsibility for the health and the welfare of our community. This crisis meeting has been convened by the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation as a result of the fact that Aboriginal suicide rates of our people are the highest in the world. This is a crisis that both the government and our community need to work very closely on to deter the ever-increasing pain and suffering that is being experienced by many of our families and our communities. Kindest regards, Robert Egginton, Director of Dumbartung. We did have today members, obviously from the Kimberley, that are MLA members here, and as per expressed their grief and their pain of the loss of their grandchildren in the Kimberley area. Mowanjum is, as you know, an absolute national disgrace in the so-called lucky country, in the sense that it even exists with the statistics it does in terms of suicide. And we also had people from Narrogin, whereas in 2009, 10, 11, there was a number of 12 deaths back to back of all first cousins. It was an absolute spate of a horror in Narrogin. And today we also had representatives from Moora, and within Moora there was just recently 4 suicides within the last 2 weeks. So this epidemic that we're up against is just happening in front of our eyes. It's a massive spate of where young people obviously not wanting to live any longer in this world that we've created, and as Aboriginal people we want to take I suppose resolution into our own hands in terms of having the access at a grassroots level to be able to develop these very programs, because a lot of the funding, as you're aware, Premier, goes into mainstream agencies like Centrecare, which is run through the conglomerate of welfare agencies of the Catholic Church, Anglicare, also through Uniting Care, which is made up of agencies of the Uniting Church, and of course mainstream government departments. So we know our people aren't accessing those agencies for the support and the help that they need. So here is our position from a very, very big meeting today, a massive meeting actually in terms of getting our community together to fund Dumbartung. For 3 years we were given a mandate today through the adjudicator Dean Collard from our people to be able to take up, if you like, the scope and to deal with the continuation of creating this awareness within our community. So I know we're limited in time, but it would be good if you could give us a response to our request and to how you may feel about the fact that Aboriginal suicide is the highest suicide in the world in terms of its statistics. It's as per part of the United Nations Indigenous reports that state Aboriginal suicide as being the highest suicide rates in the world.
All right, well look, thanks for coming here, following your meeting, and I guess congratulations is not the right word, but I'm pleased that you had that meeting, and I think, and obviously a lot of parents and relatives of young people, mainly young men, but I imagine there's young girls as well, but mainly young men. It is a tragedy, and you use the word epidemic, and I think that's a fair description as well. From my knowledge, often you talk about spates of suicides, and whether it's one copying the other, and I know that particularly if there's a funeral, that makes people very vulnerable in the sense. I'll respond more formally to that, obviously, the state government has tried to put more effort into mental health with the commission and a minister for mental health and into suicide prevention, but there is still a big job to be done. And I take your point. There is a massive disparity in the rates of suicide for Aboriginal people as distinct from the wider community. I mean, I don't know any discussions today whether you talked about at all, some of what you think the causes might be or how you might deal with it. If you did, I'd be interested in perhaps learning a bit more about that. But it is a mystifying and tragic event. So look, I will go through that and see see what can be done. But I do respect you for taking the issue head on, and it's a very difficult issue to deal with. And,
absolutely.
And the fact that you're talking about it, and across various Aboriginal communities and groups, I think that's maybe a start.
Yep.
But I don't know if there's anyone else that wants to make any comments. I wish I had the solution. I don't. But I think as a government, we've been open to different approaches in dealing with a whole lot of social issues, and I think it's a great shame in Australia, really.
Self-determination and self-control by Aboriginal people for Aboriginal people is of utmost importance in this case and in other cases in regards to land, law and culture of Aboriginal people in the state of Western Australia.
Look, I think I'm always conscious that I might be speaking from a white perspective, and so you're not missing the point. But I think that's true, and part of the, I guess, in the Kimberley with James Price Point, which may be not happening now, but part of the thrust there was to allow Aboriginal people, or encourage them to get a self-determination in terms of land and work and opportunity and businesses and the like. And I guess for young people to have that regularity of something to do worthwhile, not just sort of sitting around and talking and getting depressed. In the southwest, and again, we're trying to push into view, but we are keen to sort of develop the land settlement in the southwest with Noongar people, and I think that adds to sort of dignity and pride and something to do. So that is part of it, a big part of it. But,
Does your government have a zero tolerance towards racism and violence?
Well, I don't think we've expressed it that way, but certainly racism is not acceptable at all.
I think maybe Dean might just like to sum up today's meeting as the adjudicator. He had a very hard and difficult position today in terms of putting direction into the meeting. And I think maybe also we need to state that, and you may be aware, Premier, that the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation has been part of the Clontarf campus for the last 25 years. You've received letters from us in the past, and at the moment we don't, and we're not in receipt of government funding. We're on stopgap funding through Lottery West, and we need resources at Dumbartung in order to keep our services provided for the community. It came out very, very clear and strong today that the mandate for Dumbartung to continue its work on behalf of the Noongar community was consolidated within the meeting. But at the same time, I must stress that the only government funding that we are and have got at the moment is from Lottery West. We're not secured into funding, very ad hoc,
Yeah, I mean, I guess what came through the thread of the Aboriginal voice about saying at the end of the day, I mean, we will take responsibility for what's happening in our community. The great strength lies in us coming together, and that's what we did at that meeting. But Robert is right in saying that we need a facilitator, we need a point at which we can bind or connect up the events and the happenings that occur in our country. We don't have the old systems at work, so we need a voice. And I think what happened today was we're saying we should give Dumbartung that voice to be able to connect us up. And we're not in opposition to current services.
No.
We're not in opposition to what Spolsky's doing. It's value adding to something that's not there. And what it is also about is about our culture, that we don't even have the words to be able to articulate what that means. but it's been taken away from us, and it's a generational pain. And we don't expect you as a white person to understand, but this generational pain can only be understood by our people that have been through it. I don't think the government can resolve what's facing us. We need resources. We have the answers, honestly. We can deal with this pain. It's going to take time. But it is about saying the church groups and all those mainstream services that get this money, what they do is employ Aboriginal people, but they're constricted by their own structures. They don't know how to do it. If you want, and we want it, we want to make a difference, because we don't want this suicide things to keep on continuing. But this generational pain has to be handled by us as Aboriginal people. Resource us and we'll deal with it. That's all.
That's it.
Can I one of the things that really, well, you know, Robert's my brother and losing a nephew and seeing what Robert said and through was hard enough, but there was a lady the lady's family has 3 children from the one family.
Yeah, Mrs. Nundle.
So she lost, what, 3 out of 4?
Yeah.
3 out of 4, and I don't think any of us have any problem with the opportunities that you were saying that should be there and are there, but we've got to get over this suicide and then the healing stuff to take the real opportunities and do something with them. At the moment, people are just reeling with the whole suicide stuff.
In here you made mention of a safe place.
Yes. Yep.
So you obviously got something in mind.
Yes, we're thinking very much a place that's governed by an ethic where it's our people to whom people come to reach out to as a first step. So it's really like a physical helpline. So if one has to be taken there by a loved one or one crawls there, but it's somewhere where when a person's life becomes to a point of being in despair, where they're challenged to whether they're going to endure the next moment in their life or they want to release themselves into death, can actually come where there's Aboriginal people, not clinical psychologists or counsellors or psychiatrists, but us as people to whom understand that pain and suffering, and we've been through that we can say it's okay. It may never get better, but it will get a little bit easier as each phase of time passes. So the first step is for them to fall into the arms of those who've suffered and understand that pain, and to know what that darkness and that journey is about. And then we can make the referrals onto the more appropriate professionals who are there in place for mental health issues and problems. So I think that first step approach is really important. I did make note that can be basically structured within existing organisational structures like Yorgum, Derby, Yerrigan and ADS. But I think when it comes to the awareness programs, I think what Dan talked about is really important. Dumbartung, we took the initiative following Bob's death because Dumbartung was a place that people could come to, that they knew that me and Selena had been through that loss. Because when we lost Bob, there was absolutely nowhere Premier to go to. Nowhere at all to seek some understanding or solace, other than those who come, put their hand on my shoulder who'd been through it and said, Robert, it's okay. As hard as it'll be, it'll never get better, but it'll get a bit easier. So we made a beautiful tribute video that we showed to the meeting today. It was a tribute video of all the young men and women who had passed away. And when Dennis refers to one particular family, and that was Angela Nundle from Esperance, she was in the Kalgoorlie Miner front page story some years ago. She had lost 3 of her children to suicide. But what we're now seeing in some of the families is multitude of deaths, not just the loss of one child, but the loss of a number of children, and then a loss of extended grannies. And when you have to take your little ones, and I talk through my own personal experience now, our little grandson, Bob, who at the time was only 3 when his dad passed away, and try to explain to him that Daddy's not coming home tonight. And then his partner, I'm talking his father's partner, took up with another young man. He hung himself only 2 months ago in Belga. So I had to take my little grandson, who had gone from 3, telling him that his daddy had passed away, now to where another senior man in his life, his stepfather, had hung himself as well. That I'm having to tell little children that are 6 and 7 and 8 years old that mummy and daddy's not coming home tonight. And I don't think, as a society, again, that is as affluent and as rich as this country is, that we should be having to tell our little children that their mummies aren't or daddies aren't coming home. And, you know, we're doing this without any resources, as Dean's stated. We're doing it with no support other than ourselves. But yep, we're going through the journey, but today came a point in the crisis where we're saying to the state government very, very clearly that Dumbartung needs the mandate to keep the awareness of, you know, what's happening in our communities regarding these suicides, but not just suicides, also self-injury, where our young people are slashing themselves to the bone, and, you know, where every one suicide actually happens, there's 35 attempts that fail. So, you know, what we're going to be looking at, I believe, in the next generation or so, if we don't deter this now, I would say that maybe every nuclear family will suffer the loss of a child within the next 3 generations. And that is where my commitment to our people, regardless of whether Dumbartung's funded or not funded, it is just a calling in my life now, and I didn't ask to carry this burden, and I would rather not even have had to have that meeting today and to embark onto where I've gone into this darkness at 56 years of age. But of course, it is through the loss of our son that me and Selena pursue to make sure that other families don't have to suffer the same way that we have done. So, yep, with the resources, it can make our pursuits and our goals easier in terms of getting out those deterrents, or we just persevere with or without the assistance of the government. But we're not pleading or beggars in our own country, but we are asking you for understanding, the compassion and the assistance for Dumbartung to continue its work.
Can I ask young people that, I mean, are there signs that they may suicide or self-harm? And if there are, you know, safe places or whatever available, will they come forward and use them? Will they go to there, or will they just sort of retreat into themselves?
It's an Aboriginal one, I believe,
they will go there for
something like a YMCA sort of facility.
For Aboriginal people, yeah.
Can I just say that I work with healthcare, Doria, and I work with a lot of young children in and out of schools, and we take the kids up into the bush and we teach them traditional culture, and we teach them spiritual healing, how to deal with spiritual. All this stuff is relegated over to the mental health, and that's okay. But depression can come from a lot of things, especially when your spirit is down. It's an important thing for our people. So we take young people out into the bush, and when we get them out into the bush and we're doing stuff with them, you should see the way they change. When they're sitting around a fire talking about the things and they're dancing, you know, they grow. And the only time they look really sad is when they know they've got to go. Because we, as a people, we don't have any land. There's nowhere we can take our people to practice this culture. Through sport and rec, we go up to Bidley Brook. It's a beautiful place up there, right on the river. But we've got non-Aboriginal people telling us how long we can be there, what we can do there, don't kill our kangaroos, and things like that. And we're up there trying to heal and work with our young people, but we don't have facilities. If you could get hold of a facility for me to teach young people, don't worry about money, I'll get the money myself. I don't care how I get it, but I'll get it, and I'll heal my young people. We don't have land, we don't have places.
Such as your determination. Been empty for a long time, Premier, and I've just seen us starting to refurbish it now. But there's buildings out there such as that, and old schools out there. I've seen some down in Freo that are just wasted facilities.
You're looking for somewhere in Perth, are you, initially?
Perth, wherever we can get our hands on, because it's not just, it's more than an epidemic, it's a pandemic.
Yep.
This is a statewide. Now I spoke to Mr. White the other day, and he informed me that he's aware of 400 children in the last 12 months. I knew there was over 260, but 400. And shouldn't alarm bells be going off? And that's around the state. Something needs to be done.
But you were right with your assumption, Premier, that there are certain, probably some people there's no signs, but there's certain signs that tell people that we grab the hold of these young people and get them help straight.
Yeah, the signs can be so hard that, like in the case of young Talia Pell, who appeared right through the video today on youth suicide. Her grandfather is Johnny Pell, her father's a well-known actor, Carlton Pell. Around her was no signs. She went out one night and she just didn't come home the next day. Our son Bob had signs for 10 years We struggled against drug-induced depression for 10 years, looking for help and support from, outside and inside. But of course, we were unable to find that support. But I suppose, if we can, before closing, and you need to go, we understand. I just want to make one comment and make it really, really strong, is that before colonisation, before the tall ships arrived on our shores of this land, there were no signs and or indicators that suicide was amongst our people and our traditional lifestyles. It was recorded by early botanists and Robert Lyons when they spoke to Yalagonga and Yagan. They were asked, what do you think of somebody taking their life? And the response of Yagan and Yalagonga was they couldn't comprehend the fact that somebody could commit taking their own life and of course, as a process, leaving this life behind. So before colonisation, we didn't know as a people what this word suicide even was or what it represented. Today, and I think it was, and you made the right comment, Rex, it's not just an epidemic, it's a pandemic that's going to go into the future generations unless we can maybe look at that, Premier. And, I would encourage, if we can, a relationship where we can speak further with the Mental Health Commissioner, Eddie Bartnick, as well as Peter Fitzpatrick through Dumbartung, and that we can work on making those issues that we've presented to you today come about so we can save our young people's lives.
And you'd know from, I guess, just reading the media, we are having a very fresh look at what happens in our prison systems and how people are treated and how we can sort of get their life back in order, or maybe build a life for them. And so, Dumbartung, you obviously have, or you're confident you have the support of the whole sort of Noongar community.
Oh, that was very much today indicated. Absolutely. Yeah. We've also, if I can say, been out at the Clontarf Centre when it was in transition period from the orphanage to where the first lot of organisations took place. So we were there well before the likes of the Jared Nishams had turned it into what it is today. Dumbartung has been providing services with very restricted and stringent resources in our community for the past 26 years. Me and my wife Selena, we've worked in the Noongar community at a grassroots level for the last 34 years. So, you've got a lot of dedicated people with a dignified respect in terms of who's come to meet with you today. But Dumbartung, we've done it hard over the, particularly the last number of years. As I said earlier, we don't have any government funding at the moment, but we're persevering and our commitment is strong. Yep, and we've been around for a long time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, look, okay, look, I think, as I say, I'll get back to you. I'll go through this, but it is a dreadful waste of young lives,
Absolutely.
And it's obviously not confined to the Aboriginal community, it's inexplicable in the white community too, but
absolutely.
Just the scale of what you have is just it's horrific,
and I think we can say, and I will say on behalf of this delegation, that in respect of your recognition of that isn't taken lightly. That's appreciated in terms of your insight into that, because we're up against that. And for your audience today with us, I mean, it's gone well over the 10 minutes, and I can tell that hopefully we can pursue the goals in which we seek.
All right, okay, well, we're pleased you had the meeting today. That was a brave thing to do for many people there.
It was,
and I'm sure some good will come from it, Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. It's all about giving our young people hope to live.
And I think your comments about self-determination and economic independence or whatever.
Absolutely,
Okay, well, nice to see you.
Thank you very much, Brendan, for your time.
Yeah, hope you're always all right. Okay.
Magic.
Relax, Okay, cheers. Okay. All right, okay, so I'm going to get you down.
Thanks, for that. It's got a good feeling.
I'm not quite sure how that sort of 1930s particularly Aboriginal to me. Okay, all right.
Thanks. we'll just wait for Dan and them to down here. I'll get people into the bus and we'll be out of
I'll go,
out of here. Yeah. It was
I think they worked pretty well, Rob.
Yeah. How are you feeling, Robert? Tell us what happened.
Well, we just met with the Premier. It was scheduled first for 10 minutes. It was well over maybe 20 minutes that we spoke to the Premier, and we raised all the issues that came out of the crisis meeting today regarding funding resources for our people to deal directly with the deterring of suicide and self-injury within our community. So I think that people are feeling positive about, at least the first step now being taken, and we're going to follow this with a series of further meetings and encourage communities right across Australia to, follow suit of, in their communities to hold these crisis meetings. So collectively and culturally, there's a whole conscious raised across our nations in regards to this epidemic that we're facing as a people. This is a really serious issue in which we're facing. Many of our people are being projected into a lot of pain and suffering. So today we're beginning to raise the voice to say that enough is enough, and that we're going to try to deter our young people from these decisions.